Way Me Goodbye, Chapter 5, Part 2. I'll just go over the last line and then we'll start Part 2. I even took everything out and put each item back, but there was still no sponge bag. What you got all them books for? Asked Kevin. Look, she's got a teddy, said the little boy. And pink knickers, added Kevin, smirking. Hello, Mr. Teddy, said the little boy, picking him up. Put him down, I commanded. I tried to snatch Timmy Ted back, but the little boy darted away, holding my bear aloft. He wants to come with me, he says. He is my bear now, aren't you, Mr. Teddy? He said, and he made Timmy Ted nod his head. It was too much. I was exhausted. I was missing Mum. My best friend had been dragged away. None of the villagers had picked me. None of these children left here liked me. I'd lost my sponge bag, so I'd end up with grey skin and green teeth, and now this horrible little boy had stolen my teddy. Give him back, you hateful pig, I yelled. I dashed after him and rugby tackled him to the floor. Hey, that's enough now, Mr. Bentley said. He dashed up and hauled me off him. Dear me, what a temper. And he's only half your size. What are you thinking of? You need to be taught a lesson. He stole my bear, I cried, though I knew I sounded ridiculous. Poor Shirley's had a very hard time, Annie said quickly. And this little soul didn't steal. He just wanted to look at the teddy, didn't you, dear? Said Mrs. Henshaw. But you're going to give it back to the little girl, aren't you? The small boy sat up sniffing and silently handed my bear back. His eyes looked very big in his pale face. There were purple shadows underneath them. He seemed smaller than ever and very pathetic. I'd actually knocked him over. I felt dreadful. I'm thoroughly ashamed of you, Sally, said Mr. Bentley. He didn't even remember my name. I won't have bullying from anyone at Paradise Road. You deserve a good smacking. He was bullying me now, but I was too scared to point that out. I'm sure she's very sorry, said Mrs. Henshaw. Aren't you, dear? Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope I haven't hurt you, I mumbled. It's all right, the boy said. Didn't hurt anyway. My mum says I've got a head like a cannonball. Language, Mr. Bentley said, but gave up and retreated to a bench at the back of the hall. The big woman was feeling the little boy's boiled egg head carefully. No lumps or bumps, thank goodness. Right, off you go, all of you, and have a wash. Especially you, young man. You've got a very dirty face. I can't wash, Mrs. Henshaw. I've lost my sponge bag, with my flannel and toothbrush and everything. Mum even let me have her special soap that she got for Christmas, I said wretchedly. Oh dear, dear, what a tragedy, she said, but it didn't sound as if she was taking me seriously. But lovely Annie was listening. Let me have a look in your suitcase. I'm sure it'll be there somewhere, she said. She knelt down. Goodness, what a jumble. It was packed ever so neatly, but then it burst open when that man with the cart took hold of it, I said. Yeah, you nearly got away with it, tagging along with the convent girls. You might have regretted it, though. I went to a convent, and the nuns were unbelievably strict. What a lot of books you've got, she said, sorting through them. They were all told the rules. Just one book, said Mrs. Henshaw. The silly child can barely lift her suitcase now. Still, nothing beats a good read. Oh, Black Beauty. I wept buckets over that when I was a kid. Annie put my books back and snapped the case shut again. You're right, no sponge bag, but if your case fell open outside, maybe your sponge bag spilled into the gutter somehow. Should we go and look? She held out her hand and I took it gratefully. I trotted along beside her, as if I was really a little kid. I seemed to have lost 3 or 4 years in the course of the train journey. I wanted to rub my nose against Timmy Ted's furry snout. I hoped the little boy wouldn't try to get him out of my suitcase again. I wanted to find my sponge bag, but I'd have been far more upset if my bear went missing. It turned out my sponge bag wasn't missing at all. It was lying in the gutter, just as Annie had suggested. I peered inside and everything was there. My toothbrush, my pink flannel, Even Mum's cake of soap, still in its red packet. There we go, said Annie, patting my shoulder. Now, have your wash and brush up, and then we'll have a nice cup of tea, if old Henshaw has managed to rustle up that kettle. I giggled delightedly. Shh, now, she said, giggling too. The boys had already had their wash, though they still looked pretty grubby. The 3 girls were in the cloakroom now. The spotty one was dabbing cream all over her spots. I thought she was making them look worse, but obviously I didn't say so. The girl with the broken glasses was copying her, pretending to dab invisible cream on her own face. The littlest girl made no attempt to wash, and yelled when the spotty girl tried to help her. I waited until I had the cloakroom to myself. I could use the toilet, the WC, without fear of them listening, and then I could clean my teeth without them seeing me spitting. There was a cake of Wright's coal tar beside the basin, so I didn't need to break open my packet of soap. I washed thoroughly and repositioned my hair grip so that it anchored my hair out of my eyes. There wasn't a mirror, but I hoped I looked better. Perhaps the next village lady through the door would look straight at me and say, "Oh, I want that clean little girl with the tidy hair." I had a sudden dizzying thought. What if my mum wasn't my mum and was one of these village women? Would she have picked me? Or would she have picked a little girl with curls and dimples, just like the film star Shirley? Or would she have picked one of the boys? Everything seemed to have gone topsy-turvy in the space of a day. Where was I again? For a moment, I couldn't even remember the name of the village. Then the station sign flashed into my mind. Meadow Ridge. So where was Meadow Ridge? I thought of the map of Great Britain on my jigsaw puzzle, but I didn't know whether Meadow Ridge was north or south, east or west. For all I know, the train could have gone through a tunnel and burst out into a new land altogether, a place where you didn't have your mum to tell you what to do, and you met scores of strange people, and the only one you really liked was snatched away from you. My eyes felt watery again. You are not to cry again, I told myself fiercely. I was 10, for goodness sake. I put both my thumbs under my chin and pushed upwards. Chin up, Shirley, I commanded, and marched myself back into the hall. Mr. Bentley was still sitting by himself at the back of the hall, and Mrs. Henshaw and Annie were sitting at either end of a bench, clutching cups of tea too. Annie kept her knees together, but Mrs. Henshaw had planted her large legs wide apart so I could glimpse her knickers. They were pink, just above her knees. I was really annoyed to see that my knickers were the same colour as hers. The spotty girl and the specky girl were sitting together, sipping milk and eating white ice buns. The spotty girl ate hers by nibbling the icing off first. The specky girl copied her. The tiny girl didn't seem interested in her milk or her bun. She put them on the floor in front of her and sat grimly, still and silent. Kevin sat astride the bench, riding it like a cowboy, holding a bun in each hand. The bald boy sat cross-legged, absent-mindedly picking at the scabs on his knees. He had so much bun in his mouth that he looked like a chipmunk. There was a plate of further buns on the bench between them. "Come over here, dear," said Mrs. Henshaw, beckoning to me. "What's your name?" "Shirley Louise Smith," I said, saying it in a clear sing-song the way Mum had taught me. The 2 boys snorted and did silly imitations, spluttering crumbs. "Boys, stop it. You'll choke if you talk with your mouths full. Do you want me to take the buns away?" said Mr. Bentley. They shook their heads and carried on stuffing themselves. "We're all getting to know each other, Shirley," said Mrs. Henshaw. "This is Kathleen and Vera, and we think this little one is Irene, according to our list, but she's lost her label, so we can't check." "Not Irene," the small girl muttered fiercely. "Renee." "Ah, Renee, of course. And these boys are Kevin," she nodded to him, "and Archie. There, we all know each other now. Sit down and grab a bun before these little boys devour them all." The bun was starting to harden and stuck in my mouth. I wondered why Kevin and Archie were wolfing them down. Then I looked at the boys properly. Kevin was so skinny, his wrists looked as if they'd snap, and his prominent ears were emphasised by the pinched thinness of his face. Archie looked peaky too, his eyes too big, his neck tiny, his little hunched shoulders very narrow. Were the boys actually starving? I thought of Sarah from A Little Princess in her black dress, begging for a stale piece of bread. Did Kevin and Archie live in places like this back in London? And did they have a pet rat like in the book? I shuddered. I'd always identified with Sarah, but I was so scared of rats. I knew that sharing a room with one would drive me crazy. It's all right, Shirley, Annie said gently, seeing me shiver. We're going to get you sorted out. When you've had your tea, Mrs. Henshaw's going to take you on a little trip around the village. Mrs. Henshaw's taking me? I asked. I wasn't sure I liked the idea. She fussed so. She seemed posh, which would please Mum. She might wear dreadful granny knickers, but her heather-flecked tweed suit was clearly high quality. And her purple hat with a feather was stylish, in a country sort of way. She didn't look very mumsy, though. She wasn't the slightest bit cuddly. Large, but not at all soft. She looked as if she was made of cast iron underneath the tweed suit. She taking me as well? Kevin asked, nibbling at his nails. And me, Archie whispered. The girls all looked at her too, even Renee. Oh no, dears, I'm afraid I can't take any of you, said Mrs. Henshaw, going pink. I'm expecting my own little granddaughters any day now, all three of them, so that's my spare bedroom spoken for. But there are several people in the village who I happen to know have got spare bedrooms. I think they need a little gentle persuading, don't you? I listened in alarm. I thought of the old man in the cottage at the edge of the village, the one who called us nasty thieving cockneys. What if a man like that had a spare bedroom? I'd sooner sleep under a hedge. But what if they don't want us? I said. Of course they'll want you, Chickie, said Annie, and Mrs. Henshaw nodded, so determinedly the feather in her hat wagged. I wasn't so sure. The others all drooped too. It was obvious. We weren't the pick of the bunch. The other WVS ladies were gathering up cups and saucers and putting them on a tray. One of them came over to Annie. The train back to London goes in 20 minutes. Come on, we'd better get back to the station, she told her. I found myself clinging to Annie. Don't go, I begged. Can't you stay? I want you to find me a home. Oh, lovely, I wish I could, she said. She looked at her wristwatch. Maybe I could get a later train, she suggested to her colleagues. Don't be daft, Annie. This is the last train back. We're out in the sticks, remember? Come on, said her friend. Don't worry, dear. The children will be fine with me, said Mrs. Henshaw. Oh, well, said Annie. I don't suppose I have any choice. Be good kids now. I'll be thinking of you. She gave everyone a hug and a kiss, even Archie, who was unpleasantly sticky. When she put her arms round me, I pulled her closer. Can't I come to London with you? I whispered in her ear. Well, that would defeat the whole object of this caper, said Annie. London's not going to be safe for little sprogs like you. You're going to love it here. All the fields to play in and trees to climb. You'll have a whale of a time. Now give us a smile. I did my best. Toodaloo, she said, giving us all a wave. She went off with her friends. The Women's Institute ladies disappeared into the kitchen, and we were left with Mrs. Henshaw and Mr. Bentley. They didn't look as if they appreciated each other's company. We better be off too, children, said Mrs. Henshaw. Would any of you like to visit the WC before we leave? You what? Said Archie. The toilet, I said, raising my eyebrows. Don't you know anything? And that's the end of chapter 5. And I hope you enjoyed it. So, where do you think the children will end up? Will they all be split up? Will they stay together? Will Shirley find a home? Let me know in the comments below.